Now getting a little bit of insight into the death and dying process, what were the insights you were beginning to get, and how are they beginning to affect, as you say, they were beginning to affect at some level how you're caring for people, even if you're not expressing externally in your heart, you're beginning to understand that. So what were those insights that you started to understand and begin to apply in the way you were approaching your work?
I think the one that stands out the most for me is a woman who was a professor at the university, and her husband was also a professor. And I had permission at that point to wear my ordained robes as long as I wore like a top like this. my supervisor said, because one day I asked if I could wear my robes at work because I was in retreat. Would she mind if I did that? And so she said, well, wear them to work and I'll see. And I wore them to work and she said, actually, I think you look better. You could wear those. So that was nice. So I always wore a little top. And when I walked into this family, this woman said, I want to know what you are. And I said, well, I'm your hospice nurse. She said, well, what else are you? And I said, well, I am a Buddhist nun. And she said, I want to make sure you don't proselytize. I'm an atheist, and so is my husband, and we don't do religion. I said, absolutely, it's private, it's my private life, and I will respect that, So we developed a very close relationship, actually. I took care of her probably 6 months or so, got to know her and her husband very well. And what was interesting to me, and the uncommon observation that I now had, was that this woman, a devout atheist, in her 50s, at the prime of her life, actually, a very well respected professor. People were very sad. She had a vicious cancer, ovarian cancer, which had caused a bowel obstruction, complete. Now, I don't know if you know anything, but that normally is so painful. And this woman didn't she hardly took any medicine. And I kept offering, and she said no. And she couldn't eat. This was 6 weeks. People think you die if you don't eat. She is 6 weeks, no food. And her daily practice was making meals for her husband so that he had enough meals for as long as possible after she died. So she'd create meals every day, freeze them, because he was a dreadful cook, she said. And so she had to smell food every day, prepare it for him. Most people with this cancer can't even smell food or they get nauseated, let alone can they stand in a kitchen all day with no pain medication. She didn't want the pain medication because it would have prevented her from actively preparing these meals. And I thought to myself, this kind of compassion I have never seen. And it was so powerful, her caring about him after she left. It wasn't denying her death. She knew what was happening. He was her life. And they had no children except for a lot of dogs and cats. And I was so impressed that her compassion alone kept her mind was peaceful, devoted to him. She was not focused on herself at all. And my clinical supervisor said, this is ridiculous. You need to encourage her to take medicine. I said, well, I did, but she doesn't want any. And so for those months, she prepared meals. They got us another freezer so she could prepare enough meals for him that he wouldn't have to cook after she passed. And to me, it was a huge teaching that actually she had very little pain, very little discomfort. Her mind was one of the most compassionate minds I've ever known. She was a big teacher for me. And I grew a lot watching the power of somebody being completely focused on benefiting someone else, that it actually had the power to pacify her pain. And that pain, I knew very well, she should not have been pain-free. How did this happen? So my scientific part's working again. How does that happen? So at the end of her life, it was pretty wonderful. I asked her if I could do a little Buddhist practice privately. And she said, yeah, I might as well cover all the bases. it was a big thing. And I got to do that at the time of her death. Her death was quite remarkable and pretty smooth. She's not religious. Most of the people I had seen die in a peaceful way in the rural area, they had strong faith. That's a whole nother story. But she didn't have that, and she touched my heart more because I didn't have that. I didn't have faith, and I didn't have any spiritual inklings at all. But I started to develop huge respect for compassion, and because it was kind of like a double-blind study. She was showing me what was possible. It was a very peaceful, powerful death, and her compassion, I believe, was the reason that her death was pretty much pain-free. I know people would think I was crazy saying that, but it was true. To me, it was a big teaching about the mind of compassion. And I thought, what if I could learn more about that and then help people develop that at the time of death? Then more and more people would have that experience when they're dying, and it was a big gift. So that's
Incredible
just
story.
one of many, but
Yeah.
yeah.